And welcome back. And in this episode, what I'm going to show you is thoughts and considerations about aspect ratio and size. Now, basically what we have to do is that we have to marry our 1280 by 720 video with its resulting image, which is this. Now, you can already see that there is, I would think it's fair to say, a pretty huge size discrepancy here. So let me just, with this selected, just press copy to copy a still frame of this, and we'll come over to the image. And as I say, this is a full frame image, all singing, all dancing, 16-bit per channel, 36 whatever it is megapixel off my D800E. And over here, this is all my post-processing and development that I've done to the image. So we'll just have a quick look before, after. Better, a little better, I think. But anyway, let me just paste in. Right, so you can see here, this is 1280 by 720, and this image in its original size is 7360 by 4912 pixels at 300 dpi. So I think it's fair to say that we may need to reduce this, and so that's basically what I'm going to do. Now, in terms of aspect ratio, obviously this is a different proportional size to the kind of more letterboxy proportion of the video. Now, this is kind of really more of an aesthetic decision that you may want to make. You may want to crop the final video down so it is actually conforms to 720 by 1280, or alternatively you can actually have it at the 1280 by, I think it's 854, which is what this image will be when I again reduce the width down. And the implications of that are basically as follows. So let's just have a look at YouTube. Now, this is a version of it where it has all been cropped down to 1280 by 720, so it obviously fits very snugly and neatly into the YouTube player. Alternatively, if you wanted to kind of stick with the proportion of the original image, you can do that. It will upload, but you will obviously have some edging and cut off, as obviously it's not going to be able to go to full width based on the height. Now, again, as I say, for me, it could be an aesthetic decision, because obviously you can see in this I'm kind of losing a lot of the image, the top, and I'm particularly losing a lot of this foreground here, which is actually quite nice in terms of with the water sort of like ghosting sort of like towards the viewer. So I pretty much opted for sticking with the same aspect ratio of the image rather than the aspect ratio of the video. But again, as I say, that's just something you can decide for yourself, and I'll show you how to obviously crop this down once we get to that stage further on in the series. Right, so let's get rid of that. Let's also get rid of this. Don't need that anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Command Option I to give me the image size, and first of all I'm going to select 72 dpi as the resolution. It's just going to building a preview for that. And what you've got to make sure obviously is the width and the height are married in terms of they're linked together, because obviously if that's unchecked you'll key in the width and this will go all haywire in terms of the height. So make sure those are checked, and I'm just going to type in 1280 for the width, and it's the height is going to then mean that the height's 854 pixels. So I'm going to select OK. Have that at full size, and so that's basically what that's going to come down to. Now what I'm going to do obviously is I'm going to flatten this and start with it on its own layer. I'm obviously going to save this now as a different file name, obviously, so I don't want to overwrite or ruin my original. Now, in terms of sharpening, I would probably at this juncture apply some sharpening to this, which I hadn't already done, because it's very important to always sharpen at the actual size that the image is going to be used at. So there's a number of ways you could do that. A lot of people use Smart Sharpen. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to do a sharpening technique that is called high pass sharpening, which actually is one of my favorites. Now, in order to do that, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to copy this layer via Command J, and with it in place I'm now going to Control click on it, and I'm going to convert it to a smart object. Now with this selected, I'm now going to come down under Filters, come down to Other, and I'm going to select High Pass. Right, and it looks an absolute dreadful mess. But in essence, what high pass sharpening cleverly does, just like any other sharpening process, it's basically an edge detection technique. And what it's doing is detecting the edges in this image, and it's applying dark pixels to one side, light pixels to the other, which is to say is what all kind of like sharpening algorithms do, which kind of then gives the illusion of things looking kind of crisper and sharper. Now, normally I tend to go much more on the side of subtlety with my sharpening for obviously my online display or print, whatever. But for video, I probably would be a little bit more aggressive with the sharpening. And but having said that though, radius of 2 pixels is going to be way too much at this size. So I'm going to take that down to 1. And I'm going to go OK. Now, the reason why it's useful to create it as a smart object, because that's what smart objects do. They allow you a back in. They allow you to back into whatever filters you've applied, unlike if I hadn't converted this to a smart object. This application would actually kind of be destructive. It would be on a pixel level on this particular layer. And if I wasn't happy with it, I'd probably either have to go and undo, go back, or delete it, start again. But with a high pass smart filter in place, I just then double click on the little eyeball underneath it where it says high pass, double click on that, and then that allows me back in to make any further adjustments that I want. But in this state, this is obviously not going to be much of an award winner. If I then switch its blending mode over to overlay and toggle that on and off, you can see how that's applying the sharpening directly to the image, but as I say, in a non-destructive way because it's on its own layer. Now, even at 1 pixel, that looks way too aggressive. But as I say, don't forget, this isn't going out. This won't be going out as a JPEG. This is going to be compressed with a video codec like H.264. So things will tend to get a little bit softer. Kind of just the way it works. So again, I may go a little bit more aggressive than I usually do, but this is obviously way too hot. Now, I've either got an option to go back in and maybe make that 0.5 of a pixel, and that makes it, yeah, that kind of makes it a little bit subtle. Or if I still wasn't happy with it at this junction, I don't think I could probably go any lower. So I just might, you could then just reduce the opacity of that layer to kind of cool it off a bit and kind of reduce the presence of that sharpening. So that's at full strength. I think I'll just pull that back to around 70%. Yeah, that kind of looks good for now. And again, I'm anticipating what this is going to look like when it's actually exported as a video. So I think this might actually work. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to be bold, brave, and a complete daredevil and accept that and flatten it. So right, it's in the wood for good. So that's where we are. Now, at this juncture, what we now have to do is bring in our video. And that's kind of where all the fun begins. So I'm going to leave it here for now. And in the next episode, that's exactly what I'm going to do and show you how we can resize and marry everything up and then begin to bring in the motion of that water into this still image.